The air inside the alien marketplace was heavy with strange smells. A mix of smoke, oil, and something sour. Bright lights flashed over hundreds of faces of creatures from dozens of worlds. Some had scales, some had fur, some had eyes that glowed, and all of them had one thing in common: they had come here to buy or sell lives. Lira stood behind the metal bars of the holding cage, her knees shaking. She was young, no more than 16 in human years. Her skin pale blue under the harsh lights. She wore nothing, not even a thin cloth, and the cold made her shiver. Guards with long whips stood nearby, their reptilian eyes scanning the captives. They called her name in a harsh alien tongue, and 2 of them dragged her out. The crowd began to murmur, some voices low, others loud and cruel. Lira's eyes darted around, searching for a way to run, but there was no escape. The platform in the center of the marketplace was high, so everyone could see the merchandise. She stumbled as they pushed her up the steps. When she reached the top, the auctioneer, a fat alien with sharp teeth, smiled wide. "Look here. Rare stock from the outer colonies," he shouted, his voice booming through speakers. Healthy, young, and obedient. The crowd laughed. Some whistled. Others shouted offers before the auction even began. Lira's face burned with shame. She tried to cover herself with her hands, but it only made the crowd laugh harder. Her mind raced back to the day she was taken. Her village had been quiet that morning, the air filled with the smell of baking bread. Then the ships came, black, fast, and loud. Soldiers stormed in, breaking doors, pulling people into the streets. She had screamed for her mother, but a hand had grabbed her, pulling her into a cage. That was the last time she saw her home. Now she was here, under the lights, treated like an object. The auctioneer walked around her, pointing out her perfect skin and rare eyes to the bidders. Each word felt like a knife. Bids began to rise. Numbers shouted in alien languages. She saw creatures waving credit chips, eager to own her. Then, in the far corner of the crowd, she saw him, a human, tall and broad-shouldered. Wearing a worn leather jacket, his face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, watching everything. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. She had never seen one before, but there was something different about him. He didn't look at her the way the others did. There was no hunger or cruelty in his gaze, only something she couldn't name. The auctioneer laughed as the bidding grew. "Higher. Come now. This is a once-in-a-lifetime purchase," he called. A large, insect-like alien shouted a number that made the crowd gasp. The auctioneer grinned, ready to close the sale. But then the human raised his hand. His voice was low, steady, but it carried through the noise. "I'll pay double," he said. The marketplace went silent for a moment. The insect alien hissed in anger, but the auctioneer's eyes gleamed. "Sold to the human," he declared. The crowd erupted in noise again, some cheering, others booing. The guards shoved Lira toward the human. She braced herself for more cruelty, but instead, he removed his jacket and wrapped it around her. The warmth shocked her, and for the first time in months, she felt covered, hidden from their stares. The human leaned close and whispered, "You're safe now." She wanted to believe him, but she had learned the hard way that promises meant nothing. Still, there was something in his voice that made her hesitate. As they walked away from the stage, some in the crowd shouted insults. Others called out offers to buy her from him. He ignored them all, his grip on her shoulder firm but gentle. They reached the edge of the marketplace, where a small spaceship waited. The guards made one last attempt to search her, but the human handed over extra credits to stop them. Lira climbed the ramp into the ship, her bare feet touching warm metal. She turned back and saw the auction platform shrinking in the distance as the ship's door closed. Her heart was still pounding, her hands still shaking. But for the first time since her capture, There was a spark of something inside hers, something like hope. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, pulling the jacket tighter around her. The human moved to the controls, his hands sure and steady through the front window. Stars began to move as the engines roared. The marketplace was gone now. Just another memory she wished she could erase. The human glanced at her and said quietly, "My name is Ryan." She opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, the ship jumped into hyperspace. The hum of the spaceship filled the small cabin. Lira sat stiffly in the co-pilot's seat, still wrapped in the human's jacket. She could feel the warmth of the fabric, a strange comfort after months of cold and fear. Her eyes darted around. The interior it was worn but clean, with small blinking lights and soft hums from hidden machines. This place felt completely different from the noisy, cruel marketplace she had just left. Ryan, the human, kept his eyes on the controls. His face was calm, but his movements were quick and sure. He seemed like a man used to trouble, but not afraid of it. Lira watched him in silence. Wondering why he had bought her, she had been sold before, but never to someone like him. Most buyers smiled with greed or cruelty, but he had only looked serious, almost determined. "You're safe now," he repeated without looking at her. She pulled the jacket closer around herself, not sure if she should believe him. Safe was a word she had not felt in a long time. She wanted to ask him why he had covered her, why he had paid so much, but her voice felt trapped in her throat. The ship shook slightly as it left the auction planet's atmosphere. Through the window, she saw the dark expanse of space open before them. Stars shimmered like cold fires, and a distant nebula glowed faintly. Ryan adjusted the controls and leaned back in his seat, letting out a slow breath. "You must be hungry," he said finally. She hesitated, unsure if it was a trick. He stood and opened a small storage unit, pulling out a packet of food and a bottle of water. He placed them gently in her hands. The smell of the food made her stomach twist with hunger, and before she could stop herself, she began to eat. Ryan didn't watch her. He simply returned to the pilot's seat, giving her space. After a few moments, she found her voice. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why what?" he replied, still looking forward. "Why buy me?" she asked, her voice shaking. Ryan didn't answer right away. Instead, he adjusted a few switches, then said quietly, "Because no one else there was going to save you." She didn't know how to respond. Save her? No one had ever tried to save her before. Her life had been one long chain of cages, each one smaller than the last. "You didn't know me," she said after a pause. Ryan glanced at her for the first time, his eyes steady. "I didn't have to," he said. "I know what it's like to be powerless." The words settled in her mind like a heavy stone. He looked away again, focusing on the dark void outside. Lira finished eating slowly, trying to make sense of him. Something about the way he spoke felt real, not like the empty promises she had heard before. The ship's console beeped suddenly, breaking the quiet. Ryan's eyes narrowed as he checked the readings. His jaw tightened, and he muttered something under his breath. "What is it?" Lira asked, her voice low. "Trouble," he said simply. "We've got company." She turned toward the window and saw two small ships following them in the distance. They were sleek, fast, painted with the black and dread colors of space pirates. Her heart began to race. "Are they coming for me?" she asked. Ryan's lips pressed into a thin line. "Most likely," he said. "I saw some of them at the auction. They won't want to lose their chance to make a profit." He reached over and flicked a switch, dimming the lights inside the cabin. "Listen carefully," he said firmly. "There's a compartment under that seat. I need you to hide in there, no matter what happens. Don't come out until I tell you." Lira froze, fear gripping her chest. "What will you do?" she asked. "Keep them away," he replied, his voice steady. She hesitated. but the sound of the pirate ships growing louder outside made her move. She slid off the seat and found the hidden compartment, climbing inside. It was dark and cramped. The air warm from the ship's systems. She pulled the jacket around herself again, the only comfort she had from inside. She could hear the faint echo of Ryan's voice as he hailed the pirate ships. They answered with sharp, mocking laughter, demanding he surrender the girl immediately. Ryan's reply was short and cold. Then came the sound of engines roaring and the deep thud of weapons firing. The whole ship shuddered under the impact. Lira pressed her hands over her ears. Trying not to cry, every sound reminded her of the day her village was destroyed. But this time was different. Someone was fighting for her. The battle outside felt like it lasted forever. Then, suddenly, the sound of weapons stopped, replaced by the deep whoosh of hyperspace jump. The compartment door opened, and Ryan's face appeared. His hair was a little messy, and there was a thin cut on his cheek. But his eyes were calm. "They're gone," he said simply. Lira climbed out slowly, her legs stiff. She wanted to ask if he was hurt, but the words stuck in her throat. He moved back to the controls, checking their course. "We're heading somewhere safe," he said. Lira sat down again, still watching him. She didn't know if she could trust him yet, but something deep inside told her she might have a chance. And for the first time in years, she wanted to believe it. The deep hum of hyperspace filled the small ship. Lira sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, her hands gripping the warm jacket Ryan had given her. The stars outside had stretched into endless lines of light, and the sight made her feel both small and strangely free. For so long she had been trapped in cages, forced to see only walls. Now there was nothing but open space. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the navigation screen. He didn't talk much, but the silence between them felt different from the cold silence she had known before. This was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of someone who didn't need to fill the air with lies. After a while, he glanced at her. "You've ever been in hyperspace before?" he asked. She shook her head. "First time for everything," he said, almost smiling. She looked away, her eyes tracing the glowing trails of distant stars. Her mind kept going back to the pirate ships. "What if they come back?" she asked. Softly, "They won't," Ryan said. "Not yet." His voice carried a kind of certainty she didn't understand, but it made her want to believe him after a moment. She asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the auction. "Where are we going?" Ryan's hands moved over the controls, adjusting their path. "A place called Haven Reach," he said. "It's a hidden colony safe out of the main trade routes. The kind of place people can disappear and start over. Disappear." She repeated. He nodded. "Sometimes the only way to live is to make sure no one can find you." The thought of disappearing made her chest tighten. She had spent so long wishing she could vanish from the eyes of the cruel, but now she wondered what it would mean to start over in a place she had never seen. She didn't know anyone there. She didn't know what she could do, but she knew one thing: it had to be better than the auction block. Ryan opened a small drawer under the dashboard and pulled out a thin data pad. "Here," he said, "you can use this to learn some basic English. It'll help you talk to people in the colony." Lira stared at the glowing screen. The words were strange, but his tone was patient. "You don't have to learn it all now. Just start," he said. She tried reading the first line aloud, stumbling over the sounds. Ryan corrected her gently, never mocking her. It was the first time in years that someone had spoken to her without shouting or threatening. For a while, she focused on the lesson, repeating words until they didn't feel so strange in her mouth. The calm didn't last. A sudden alarm beeped from the ship's console. Ryan's eyes snapped to the display, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tight. "Tracking signal," he said. "Someone put a tracer on the ship. Her stomach turned. Pirates. Maybe, he said. Or the slavers. He tapped the screen, pulling up a small blinking dot, moving toward their position. They know where we are, he muttered. We need to lose them before they can get close. Lyra's hands gripped the sides of her seat. What do we do? Ryan's fingers danced over the controls. We make them think we're somewhere else, he said. With a few quick commands, he shut down the main lights, leaving the cabin in dim shadows. The hum of the engines lowered, and the ship drifted. Slowly in space, from the outside, they would look like a dead vessel. They waited in silence. Lira could hear her own heartbeat, loud in her ears. Minutes passed like hours, until finally the signal on the screen stopped moving toward them. Ryan let out a slow breath. They're scanning for us, but they'll move on soon, he said. Lira relaxed slightly. But the tension still sat heavy in her chest. Do you do this often? She asked. What? He replied, save people. Ryan's eyes stayed on the stars ahead. Not often enough, he said quietly. She studied his face in the dim light. There was something about him a weight in his eyes, as if he carried more than one lifetime's worth of pain. She wanted to ask him what had happened to him, but she kept the question to herself. Hours later, Ryan stood and stretched. You should rest, he told her. There's a small cabin in the back. It's yours for now. Lira hesitated, unused to the idea of having a space of her own. But when she walked into the small room, she found a narrow bed, a blanket, and even a small locker. It was simple, but it was hers. She lay down, the hum of the ship vibrating softly under her. Through the thin wall, she could hear Ryan moving in the cockpit. Her eyes closed slowly, and for the first time in years, she fell asleep without chains on her wrists. She didn't know that while she slept, Ryan kept scanning the space around them. He knew the pirates wouldn't give up easily, and he knew the journey to Haven Reach was only going to get harder from here. The soft hum of the ship was broken by the sharp sound of the alarm. Ryan's head snapped toward the screen, his jaw tightening. The red light on the console flashed. Warning of approaching ships. Lira, still half asleep in the small cabin, stumbled into the cockpit. What is it? She asked, clutching the jacket tighter around herself. Ryan didn't look at her, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. They found us, he said, his voice low but steady, outside the window. Two dark shapes appeared against the starry backdrop. Their hulls were black, marked with the jagged red lines of pirate clans. Even at a distance, they looked dangerous, like predators closing in on prey. Lyra's heart began to pound. They're the same ones from before, she asked. Ryan gave a short nod. They didn't give up. The pirate ships began to spread out, moving to cut off their escape. Ryan's hands gripped the controls, steering their vessel into a sharper turn. The stars outside seemed to spin. As the ship shifted, they're faster than us, Lira said, fear creeping into her voice. Speed isn't everything, Ryan replied. If we can outthink them, we can lose them. The first blast came without warning. A bright beam of energy shot past their ship, close enough to rattle the hull. The sound made Lira flinch, her mind flashing back to the day her home was destroyed. Ryan adjusted the shields, his eyes locked on the enemy ships. They're trying to disable our engines, he said. Hold on. He pushed the throttle forward, and the ships surged ahead. The pirates followed, their weapons firing in quick bursts, the cabin filled with the sound of impacts. The ship's systems straining under the hits. Lira gripped the armrest, feeling every shudder of the hull. What can I do? She asked, her voice shaky but determined. Ryan glanced at her, then pointed to a panel on her side. See those switches? When I say flip the blue one down, she nodded, her hands hovering over the controls. Ryan steered them into a cluster of asteroids. The huge, spinning rocks floated silently in the void, their surfaces lit by the distant glow of stars. The pirates followed, weaving between the asteroids as they chased. Now, Ryan shouted. Lira flipped the blue switch, and a cloud of small metallic pods shot out from the back of their ship. The pods exploded into bright flashes, blinding the pirate sensors. The pirate ships swerved wildly, one clipping an asteroid. And spinning out of control, the other kept coming, its weapons firing blindly. Ryan took the chance to dive deeper into the asteroid field. The ship's hull groaned as they passed dangerously close to jagged rock. Lyra's breath came fast. But she kept her eyes on Ryan. He didn't look scared-focused, yes, but not scared. They emerged on the far side of the asteroid cluster. For a moment, it seemed they had escaped. Then the console beeped again. "They're still on us," Ryan muttered, his eyes narrowing. The remaining pirate ship burst from the shadows behind them, engines blazing. Ryan's hands moved quickly, plotting a new course. "We're going to jump to hyperspace," he said. "But won't they follow?" Lira asked. "Not if we do it right," he replied. The pirate ship drew closer, weapons locking on. The targeting alarm filled the cabin with its urgent tone. Ryan's voice stayed calm. "When I say, hit the green switch on your side," she nodded, her hands already hovering over it. The enemy fired, a direct hit shaking the ship. Sparks flew from the panel above Ryan's head, but he didn't flinch. "Now?" he shouted. Lira slammed the green switch, and the ship's engines roared to full power. A sudden burst of speed sent them shooting forward, the stars stretching into lines again. The pirate ship tried to follow, but Ryan had triggered a fake jump signal, sending them in the wrong direction. The alarms went quiet, the cabin settling back into the steady hum of hyperspace. Lira let out a long breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her hands trembled as she looked over at T. "Ryan, you didn't just fight them off. You tricked them," she said. Ryan gave a small, tired smile. "Sometimes brains win over firepower." She looked at him for a moment longer. "Why risk this for me?" she asked. He didn't answer right away, his eyes fixed on the endless stretch of light outside. "Finally," he said, "because someone should have done the same for my sister." The words hit her like a weight. She wanted to ask what had happened, but his expression told her it was a wound not yet healed. So she stayed silent. They sat together in the quiet hum of the ship. Outside, the stars kept rushing past, but inside, something had shifted between them. For the first time, Lira felt not just like cargo being moved from one place to another, but like a person whose life mattered. The ship glided through hyperspace, the steady hum now almost comforting to Lira. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching Ryan work the controls. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words were careful, almost deliberate. Since the pirate attack, she had been looking at him differently, not just as the man who bought her, but as someone who was willing to risk everything to keep her safe. "You handled yourself well back there," Ryan said suddenly, breaking the silence. Lira blinked, surprised. "I just flipped switches," she said quietly. He gave a small smile. "You followed instructions under fire. Most people freeze when the shooting starts." She didn't know how to respond, so she looked back at the streaking stars outside. The truth was, she hadn't frozen because she had trusted him, and that trust was something she hadn't given to anyone in a very long time. After a while, Ryan tapped a small blinking light on the console. "We'll be stopping soon for supplies," he said. Lira tensed. "Will it be safe?" "Safe enough if we keep our heads down," he replied. "It's a neutral trade station. People don't ask too many questions there." The hyperspace lines shrank back into stars as they dropped out near a massive metal structure floating. In the void, the station was shaped like a giant wheel. Lights blinking along its edges, small ships drifting in and out of docking bays. Ryan guided their ship toward one of the bays, his movements steady and precise. The docking clamps locked. With a dull thud, Ryan stood and pulled on his worn leather jacket. "Stay close to me," he said. "Don't talk to anyone unless I tell you to." Lira nodded, pulling the jacket he'd given her tighter around her small frame. The station's corridors were crowded with beings from all over the galaxy, tall, short, furred, scaled, and everything in between. The air smelled of spices, metal, and too many bodies in one place. Lira stayed close to Ryan, her eyes wide as she took in the colors and sounds. They passed stalls selling strange, glowing fruits, alien tools, and weapons that looked older than some planets. Ryan stopped at a supply vendor, a squat alien with 3 eyes and quick hands. He traded a few credits for ration packs, fuel cells, and a small bag of mechanical parts. Lira stood quietly, scanning the crowd. That was when she saw them too. Figures leaning against a wall, their eyes fixed on her. They were tall, wearing dark coats, but she caught a glimpse of the weapons at their sides. Something in her gut told her they weren't just curious strangers. She tugged at Ryan's sleeve. "What is it?" he asked without looking away from the vendor. "Those two," she whispered. "They're watching me." Ryan's eyes flicked toward them for only a second before he finished his purchase. He placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her casually. "Away from the stall. Keep walking," he murmured. "Don't look back." They moved deeper into the station. Weaving through the crowd, Lira could feel the 2 men following. Her heart thudded in her chest. "Who are they?" she asked. "Bounty hunters," Ryan said grimly. "They must have seen you at the auction." They turned down a narrow maintenance corridor, the noise of the main market fading behind them. Ryan moved quickly, his hand on the small blaster. At his side, the echo of footsteps behind them grew louder. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low and controlled. The hunters appeared at the other end of the corridor, their weapons already drawn. One of them grinned, showing sharp metal teeth. "Hand her over, human," he called. "We can make this quick." Ryan didn't slow down. "You'll have to try harder than that," he said, his voice like steel. The first shot rang out, a bolt of red light slicing past Lyra's head. Ryan fired back, his aim sharp and fast, forcing the hunters to take cover. "Go," he shouted to her, pointing toward a side door. Lira ran, the sound of blaster fire ringing in her ears. She reached the door. Slamming her hand against the control panel, it slid open with a hiss, revealing a dim maintenance tunnel. Ryan was right behind her. They ran through the narrow space, the air thick with the smell of oil and dust. The tunnel twisted and turned, finally opening into a hidden docking bay. Ryan's ship was parked there, small and unassuming among the larger freighters. They scrambled up the ramp, Ryan hitting the controls to seal the hatch. The engines roared to life, the ship lifting off the deck just as the hunters burst into the bay. Blaster bolts struck the hull, but Ryan pushed the ship forward. The bay doors opened. They shot out into open space, leaving the station shrinking behind them. Lira collapsed into her seat, breathing hard. "That was too close," she said. Ryan gave a short nod, his eyes still scanning the instruments. "They'll keep coming," he said, "which means we have to move faster." She looked at him, her fear mixing with something else, curiosity. "Why do you care so much?" she asked. Ryan's hands tightened on the controls. "Because I couldn't save my sister when she needed me," he said quietly. "I'm not going to fail again." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. Lira didn't ask more, but she understood something important. This was personal for him. And now, in some strange way, it was personal for her too. The ship cut through the darkness of space, the stars drifting slowly past the windows. Inside the cockpit, the tension was heavy. Ryan sat at the controls, scanning the navigation display. The blinking dots on the screen told him what he already knew: the bounty hunters were still tracking them. Lira sat beside him, her knees pulled up to her chest, her eyes fixed on the endless black outside. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "No," Ryan agreed. "They won't." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the seat. "What are we going to do?" He leaned back, his gaze fixed on the navigation chart. "We can't outrun them forever, so we outsmart them." She turned to look at him. "How?" Ryan pointed to a section of space on the display, a wide band of swirling colors and jagged shapes. "The Wraith Belt," he said. "An asteroid field mixed with ion. Storms, most ships avoid it, but if we can get through, they'll lose us." Lira frowned. "And if we can't get through?" "Then we don't have to worry about the bounty hunters anymore," he said dryly. For a moment, she wasn't sure if he was joking. But when he started adjusting their course toward the Wraith Belt, she realized he was serious. Her heart pounded. But she didn't argue. If Ryan believed they could make it, she would try to believe too, before they entered the belt. Ryan handed her a headset and pointed to a side control panel. "You're going to help me fly?" he said. Her eyes widened. "I've never flown a ship before." "Good," he replied. "That means you won't have any bad habits." He showed her the basic controls, how to adjust the stabilizers, how to track the closest asteroids, how to reroute power when needed. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Wraith Belt. Before them stretched a chaotic storm of spinning rock and glowing clouds of electric light. The asteroids turned slowly, some the size of houses, others bigger than cities. Between them, ion storms flashed in brilliant bursts of blue and white. It was beautiful and terrifying. "Hold the stabilizers steady," Ryan said, his voice calm but firm. Lyra's hands gripped the controls, her eyes darting between the scanner and the window. The first asteroid loomed ahead, its surface dark and jagged. Ryan eased the ship around it, the hull groaning as they passed within meters. Behind them, the bounty hunters appeared, their ships sliding into the belt with far less caution. "They're still coming," Lira warned. "They won't for long," Ryan replied, steering them deeper into the maze of rock and lightning. A sudden flash lit the cockpit, and the ship shook violently. "Storm surge," Ryan said. "Adjusting the power flow, switch auxiliary to main thrusters now." Lyra's fingers moved. Quickly flipping the correct switch, the engines roared. Pulling them out of the storm's path, another asteroid spun into view, tumbling faster than the others. Ryan swerved around it, but the hunters behind weren't as lucky. One of their ships clipped the rock, spinning out of control before disappearing into the storm. Lira let out a shaky breath. "One down," Ryan said. "One to go." The remaining hunter was fast, matching every turn they made. Ryan frowned. "They're good," he admitted. "We'll have to be better." He glanced at Lira. "You're going to drop the decoys when I say?" She nodded, her hand hovering over the release switch. The hunter closed in, its weapons powering up. "Now?" Ryan barked. Lira hit the switch, and a series of small metallic orbs shot from the back of their ship. The orbs exploded into clouds of shimmering particles. Scattering the hunters' targeting systems, the enemy ship swerved sharply, right into the path of a massive spinning asteroid. The collision lit up the dark with a burst of fire. Then silence. Lira stared at the debris drifting away. "They're gone," she said, almost in disbelief. Ryan gave a short nod, his focus already back on steering them toward open space. The path out of the Wraith Belt was narrow, flanked by two glowing storms. "Steady now," he said, guiding the ship through. The moment they cleared the belt, the stars opened up before them. Ryan leaned back in his seat, letting out a slow breath. "That's the last of them," he said. Lyra's shoulders sagged with relief. She realized her hands were still gripping the controls, and she slowly let go. "You did good," Ryan said, his eyes meeting hers for a moment. She felt a small, unexpected smile tug at her lips. "Thanks for trusting me," she said. He didn't answer right away. But there was something in his expression, something that told her he trusted her more than he had trusted anyone in a long time. He set their course back toward hyperspace. Haven Reach is a few jumps away. He said, if we move fast, we'll get there before anyone else can pick up our trail. Lira nodded, her mind still replaying the way they had worked together for the first time. She felt like she was more than just someone he had rescued. She was part of the fight to survive. The jump out of the Wraith Belt left the ship floating in the calm black sea of space. For the first time in days, there were no alarms, no chasing ships, no flashing warning lights. Lira sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring out at the endless stars, her heart still pounding from the escape. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his hands steady on the controls, his eyes scanning the navigation screen. Haven Reach, he said finally, pointing at a small blinking dot on the chart. That's our destination. Lira leaned closer, trying to imagine what it might be like. What is it? She asked. Ryan's voice softened. It's a place where people like us can live without looking over their shoulders. The hours passed in quiet. Lira practiced a few more words on the datapad Ryan had given her, smiling faintly when she got them. Ryan didn't say much, but she could tell he was more relaxed now that the bounty hunters were gone. When the console beeped, he tapped a few controls. There, he said. That's it, through the window. Lira saw a faint shimmer in the distance as they drew closer. The shimmer resolved into a massive station hidden within a cluster of glowing blue nebula clouds. It was shaped like a sprawling city, with towers, docking rings, and lights that sparkled like stars. Ships of all shapes and sizes floated nearby, some patched together with mismatched parts, others sleek and well-maintained. Ryan opened the comms, sending a coded message. A calm voice replied, granting them permission to dock. As they approached, Lira felt a strange tightness in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was fear or excitement. This place was completely new, but it might also be her first chance at a real life. The docking clamps locked with a low thud. Ryan stood and gestured toward the ramp. Come on, he said. Let's see what kind of welcome we get. Lira followed him down into the docking bay, her eyes wide. The air was warm and carried the scent of cooked food, engine oil, and something sweet. People moved through the bay, humans, aliens, and hybrids, all talking, working, or laughing. No one stared at her. No one whispered or pointed. She realized with a small jolt that here she was just another face in the crowd. It felt strange, but also good. They made their way through a wide corridor lined with small shops and stalls. Ryan greeted a few people with nods, exchanging quiet words. Eventually, they reached a door marked with a glowing symbol. Inside was a cozy room with tables, chairs, and a long counter where a tall woman with silver hair stood. Her eyes lit up when she saw Ryan, back from the dead again. She said with a grin, "Not this time," Ryan replied, motioning toward Lira. "This is Lira. She's new here." The woman's expression softened, and she came around the counter. "Welcome," she said warmly. "You're safe here." The words hit Lira harder than she expected. Safe. It still felt like a dream, but hearing it from someone else made it feel a little more real. The woman handed them each a steaming cup of something that smelled rich and sweet. Lira took a cautious sip, the warmth spreading through her chest. Ryan sat back in his chair, watching her reaction. "You'll be staying here for a while," he said. "There's work if you want it. People to meet, things to learn." Lira hesitated. "What about you?" she asked. Ryan gave a small smile. "I've got other places to be." Her chest tightened. "Will you come back?" He didn't answer right away, just looked at her with that same steady gaze. "If you need me, I'll find a way," he said. The days that followed were unlike anything Lira had ever known. She was given her own small room with a real bed, a soft blanket, and clothes that fit her. She helped in the communal kitchens, learned more English, and even started talking with some of the other residents for the first time. She laughed without worrying who might hear. One afternoon, she stood on one of the station's open balconies. Watching a group of children play with a floating ball, they laughed and shouted, running in every direction. She remembered watching other children play once back when she couldn't join them. Back when she had no freedom, now she felt the sunlight of the nebula wash over her face, and she smiled. She wasn't just watching anymore, she could be part of it. A sound behind her made her turn. Ryan was standing there, hands in his jacket. "Pockets, thought you left," she said, surprised. "I did," he replied. "But I wanted to make sure you were settling in." She stepped closer, looking up at him. "You didn't just buy me," she said softly. "You gave me my life back." For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he gave a small nod, his eyes warmer than she had ever seen them. "Make it a good one," he said. With that, he turned and walked back toward the docking. Bay, she watched him go, her heart full of something she couldn't name. Freedom, maybe, or hope. Whatever it was hers now, and she would never let it go.